Today, Ukraine is calling for an urgent UN Security Council meeting following Russia's biggest air attack on the country since the start of the invasion. Dozens of people are dead, more than 100 are injured after Russia targeted multiple regions across Ukraine. This video is from the eastern city of Dnipro, showing heavy damage to a maternity hospital after a missile strike. Officials say that several expectant mothers and newborn babies were lucky and unhurt after fleeing to the bomb shelter before the building was hit. Let's discuss now with Michael BOCIURKIW. He's a former spokesperson for the Organization for Security in Europe. Michael, thank you so much for being with us. Help us put into perspective the scale and significance and the timing of this most recent attack.
Sure. Good to be with you, Boris. Well, that's a heck of a lot of muscle. Ukrainian armed forces are saying about 158 drones and missiles were sent, including hypersonic ones, and they managed to shoot down 114. We have not seen such a big barrage since about November of last year, when 70 or so were sent at once Ukraine's way. Look, as for timing, it's hard to say, hard to get into the twisted mind of Mr. Putin, but part of me believes that this was payback for Ukraine's missile or drone attack on quite a big ship in the Russian Black Sea naval fleet. And that has resulted in Ukraine over the past few months destroying about 20% of that fleet. The Russians might have also been targeting critical infrastructure, but they hit other targets instead. Or this could be a harbinger or precursor to other attacks, ground offensive on Ukraine. One more thing, Boris, which is absolutely mind-boggling when you think about it, is that one of the Russian missiles, according to the Polish military, spent about 3 minutes or 24 miles in Polish airspace. Now, this is not the first time that's happened, but that is the longest time I believe a missile has lingered. It entered Polish airspace and then it entered back into Ukraine. NATO's response to that is we are going to remain vigilant, but look, it was either a malfunction or incompetence on the Russian part, or the Russians are probing, testing NATO defenses. And that, of course, will be of interest to President Xi of China, who's looking carefully how the United States will respond to a possible invasion of Taiwan.
Yeah, a range of possibilities when it comes to why that missile went into Polish NATO airspace. I'm wondering if you think that kind of act might spur sentiment among lawmakers in the United States who are hesitant to provide Ukraine with more aid, the kind of aid that's been proposed by the White House.
Sure. Well, we have 61 billion on the line from the United States and another 50 billion or so in Europe. And maybe that is the silver lining to all of this, is that it will wake up those legislators to approve that funding. The last 250 million authorized by the White House to spend for Ukraine had just been sent. So there's nothing left. And the Ukrainians are saying if nothing comes, they will have a very difficult time. So hopefully when they come back from their break, they will approve that 61 billion. And, you know, Boris, I have to be very blunt with you on this one. I fall on the side of the ledger of CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh, who said, if one or both of those funding packages do not come through, Russia will occupy all of Ukraine within 2 years. That's what we're possibly looking at right now.
Wow, that would be a potentially devastating outcome for Eastern Europe, no doubt. I'm wondering, from the Kremlin's perspective, not that the outcome isn't already predetermined, but how much does it impact the situation in Ukraine that Vladimir Putin has this re-election coming up? How do the domestic politics of Russia play into what we're seeing in the battlefield?
Well, I think in terms of Russian domestic politics, he's going to slide back into another term, probably a life term. But I think what Mr. Putin is doing is keeping a very close eye on what's happening in the United States, not only, Boris, in terms of the funding that's supposed to come through, but I think he's also trying to run down the clock until the elections in the United States, hoping that a Mr. Trump or MAGA Republican will get in, and then a quick deal could be made that will not be in Ukraine's favor. What the Ukrainians are now preparing to do in case of that eventuality, that funding doesn't come through, they're, for example, tripling their domestic production of weapons. They're upgrading their drone technology. And I think you're going to see more very surgical strikes on the Black Sea Fleet, way inside Russia, to get as much of Russian military capability diminished. Just quickly, I'll throw out a figure there. And, with pretty limited resources over the past almost 2 years, Ukraine has been able to denigrate about 50% of Russian conventional military capability. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Michael BOCIURKIW, we have to leave the conversation there. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Thanks.